Welcome back, everybody. We'll now hear a couple more deputations relating to items 16, 17 and 18. So the first one is the Christchurch West Melton Water Management Zone Committee. I'd like to welcome Mike Patchett, Deputy Chairperson of the committee, and he will speak to us regarding item 16. Welcome.
Well, thank you for taking the time to hear from the Zone Committee. I'm here to briefly explain why we all need better stormwater management and erosion sediment control across Christchurch, but particularly in the Port Hills area, which, as we know, are highly erodible landscapes. The Zone Committee has an action plan, and its priority actions the last couple of years have focused on stormwater management and trying to build capacity with industry and government, and in erosion sediment control. We see that as the greatest threat to the health of our waterways right across Christchurch. Before I get into that, I would like to acknowledge the dedicated staff, both from the City Council and ECAN, which have provided us with briefings and site visits, which have informed the Zone Committee towards making this recommendation before you today. I would like to just briefly go over what the problem is we're trying to fix. As you probably know, we have mass loads of sediment and other contaminants being carried by those sediments, discharging off particularly the Port Hills area, mainly from urban development, commercial developments, into the Avon Heathcote estuary and the Opawaho waterways. From the Council's recent survey of urban development sites, they've concluded that there is currently significant industry non-compliance to the erosion sediment control plans that are set up in their regulatory regimes and their consents. And the conclusion of that is that the result is that the Opawaho Heathcote catchment and its waterways have the poorest water quality of all the 5 big catchments in Christchurch. And that's according to the annual City Council Healthy Waterways report card. To take a case in point, last year the Redcliffe Ratepayers Association came to the Zone Committee and ECAN seeking to inform us of a problem that's been persisting in their area and to engage ECAN to see what they could also do about it. What we have there is streets near the Redcliffe area where in a heavy rain event we have mass loads of coarse and fine sediments washing down from that hill slope, down the road through the urban development site, into the street, into the drains. And that's persisted for at least 2 years. The residents complained consistently with photographs and writing and videos to the City Council to remedy this problem, to no avail. The problem here is that the legal discharge limits are 50 milligrams per litre of total suspended solids, and I've seen the videos of this in a storm event, and it's running cappuccinos by the tanker load. The problem here we have is that the City Council can advise the Residents Association that the developer was in compliance with its regulatory requirements related to stormwater and erosion sediment control. Environment Canterbury looked at the issue and initially issued an abatement notice, but that was subsequently withdrawn when a stormwater management plan was found to cover the site. So legally, both City Council and ECAN regard the developer in compliance with regulatory requirements. Once those sediments and dirty water enters the stormwater system, it's the responsibility of the City Council. And this is what's happening. We have mass loads of sediment plumes entering the estuary, frequently in stormwater events. And that discharge is being covered by a consent issued by the Environment Canterbury to the City Council that covers all the stormwater discharges across the city. That consent is reviewed every 6 months by both parties, and as far as I'm advised, and in fact it's in your briefing paper as well, that at this point Environment Canterbury is satisfied with the administration of that consent by the City Council. But that is the result. So, having considered that and taken briefings by the Residents Association and City Council and ECAN officers, the Zone Committee considered the information in front of them and has made a serious recommendation both to Environment Canterbury and the City Council. And I'll read that to you. And that is that the City Council and ECAN conduct an independent audit of the environmental effectiveness of the regulatory instruments and arrangements and the capacity building that's applying to erosion, sediment control and contaminated stormwater management, including that comprehensive stormwater discharge consent held by Council. And that the audit outcomes be used to improve those regulatory frameworks, the instruments around it, and the City Council ECAN protocols for cooperation, and ultimately to improve the environmental outcomes for the waterways of Christchurch. Now, from your briefing papers, from your staff, it's worth drawing your attention to the fact that the staff do not support this recommendation in that brief, and they also talk about Environment Canterbury staff not supporting the recommendation at this point. But I would draw to your attention, and I think in the first section of your briefing paper, it alludes to the fact that Environment Canterbury does not support that recommendation. That is not the case. Environment Canterbury Council is yet to consider this recommendation and will do so as we're advised in early May. But it is a cooperative arrangement to be effective. So we would argue that the business as usual recommendation by your officers is not good enough to change things, to make things better, to reduce the loads of sediment entering those waterways, and ultimately to achieve healthier waterways all round. We do request you consider carefully action and investment towards improving the effectiveness of your regulatory systems, particularly in high-risk land development areas like the Port Hills, through its consenting, regulation, compliance enforcement, and the capacity building within your offices and industry. We need to find the weaknesses in the current system as it's set out, and we need to fix them, strengthen those weaknesses for better outcomes. From my experience in this sort of game, tackling the regulatory systems and the compliance enforcement and building better capacity with industry is quite cost effective in creating the change we need to reduce the loads to our waterways and improve the waterway health. And lastly, there's a point made in your briefing papers by the staff that the pending 3 water reforms, whether they be uncertain, effectively are a barrier upon which you shouldn't take any action in the short term because whoever looks after the pipes might change. We don't think that is a valid argument, particularly when we're trying to reduce the sources of contaminants from those urban developments. And that relates to planning consents, regulation of those developments, and compliance monitoring enforcement on the ground before it gets into those stormwater systems. So I leave you with that advice and look forward to your consideration of the Zoning Committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Really interesting comment with regards to the 3 waters, because my understanding is that we're going forward to do as much as we can as it planned because we want to kind of hand it over in good condition, etc. But you're saying you've been told that, oh no, we don't want to do this bit because 3 waters is, so it's exactly the opposite to what we're being told by staff who are doing other things. Is that?
It's my interpretation of your own briefing paper by your staff. It's in the last para or two where they raise the issue of the 3 waters reforms and the complication around that in relation to our recommendation. So,
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora, Mike. Good to meet you the other day at Rapaki Marae and have a bit of a chat about this. So, just for my own clarity, I mean, in those conversations at Rapaki, have you sort of like talked to your counterpart or counterparts in the Banks Peninsula zone just about the experiences that they're having as well? Like, because you know it's the same hill, right? Same hill, different directions, but ultimately the same sort of problem. I'm just interested if there's a kind of like a joined up sort of thought process there.
It's joining up. I think it's joining up rather effectively. Both zone committees are working on a joint working group and a workshop, effectively, in later this month, all about erosion, sediment control in the Port Hills. So we're just putting together the invite list, but it's quite extensive. A number of players that might be interested in that topic. It'll be a day workshop, and we hope to come out of that with a better idea of what can be done in terms of influencing the $9 million program that Council run in the Port Hills. And both zoning committees can take home some good advice from that workshop and the experts about how they can best move forward.
No, that's good. I mean, because there could be some economies of scale or whatever it is, for want of a better term. Thank you. Cheers.
So thank you. Would you say that things like up in Sparks Road, Sutherland's Basin, those sort of things certainly are helping the situation?
They certainly help retain some of the sediments, but I think the most cost-effective way is cut the source, reduce the amount of tonnage of coming off both rural forestry, adventure parks and urban developments across the Port Hills. And that's...
Okay, so because one of the things, are you aware that at the moment we've got $100 million worth of stormwater retention basins that are on hold because ECAN are just reading the letter of the law a bit different to what I would probably read it?
I have seen media on that issue. But again, detention basins and...
That's not an excuse on my part, by the way.
No. I mean, my reaction to that was I think there is certainly a place for flood detention to protect some of the residential and commercial premises downstream. But if you've got significant tonnage of sediments pouring down the hills into those basins, you've got a serious maintenance cost to maintain the capacity of those flood retention basins over the long term. So again, reducing the sources is the key.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more, but just sort of to follow on from that, reduce the source, that's for sure, but also be able to stop it going into the river. And if you have to clean out, take the Adventure Park pond, which is being built at the moment. Yes. At least it can be cleaned out before it gets to the river. So yes. I think they're quite a good thing.
They certainly contribute to reduce loads into the waterways.
Help the situation. And Waitaki Street that we are building, and it's actually on hold at the moment because of the same problem, that's taking all the stormwater from around the Aranui area down a pipe that I actually laid a long time ago through Farmer Street. But yes, time's up. Okay. But yeah, okay. I see what you're saying, and I'm certainly listening to it. Tyler, please, and then Mel.
Kia ora. This is actually for Helen or Lynn, just around conflict stuff, of me being a part of it. Can I vote on the recommendations?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Tyler? I didn't quite catch the full sentence.
Around this issue, as I'm a part of this committee, is it safer that I stand away from the table? Saying I'm not sure where I stand. I thought it would be okay, but just wanting to just double check.
That's no problem. It's fine.
Yeah, you're fine, mate.
No, that's cool. Thanks. That's it.
Okay. Mel.
Hey, thanks for your presentation. In the last slide, your second bullet point is about finding and fixing the weakness in the current BAU. And in the report that the staff gave to the committee, and it's in our agenda here, staff had said that it indicates that what they've looked at is that the controls are there and that they would be effective if they were employed properly. And the fact is that they're not a lot of the time. And so it seems to me that a lot of the problem has been identified, which is why the staff have put their recommendations through. Would you agree with that, or do you think there are other issues other than that?
I think the scope of the problem is quite broad. It's to do with the strict regulation of developments, the instruments that are used, the stormwater control plans, the erosion control plans, what's in them, what standards are set, how they're monitored, how they're complied with, what level of capacity building there is within council to even inspect and monitor effectively, and probably more importantly, the development of or building the capacity with the industry so they know what best practice is and they know that what they have to do to comply. So it's much broader than a single element It's a combination of all those factors combined which will create the change.
So, sorry, as a follow-on, so do you not believe that the officer recommendation to work together to improve construction industry compliance doesn't cover what you're talking about? Because that's quite a broad statement that would cover all of those things.
For me, it's a throwaway line. They're always doing that. You know, the officers that we deal with on both sides are always trying to deal with the problem in front of them. So that's a given. What we're looking for is actual action to change things from the business as usual model that's currently ineffective to something that's more effective in reducing loads. So I didn't see anything in that briefing note which was an action in that direction. There is consideration of a few things, but no action.
Okay, thank you. Yanni, we've all had a talk, so you had your hand up. So if it's real quick, please, mate.
Thanks. Just real quick. I know this is talking about erosion and sediment control, but in the recommendation 1, you also talk about contaminated stormwater management, and so I was just kind of interested in if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit on that and just get your view on, do you think we've dropped the ball both as a regional council and a city council over monitoring what's happening in that industrial discharges to our urban waterways? Like, is it around that sort of those industrial activities that have the potential to cause harm to our rivers that you're kind of asking us to look at in that recommendation?
Not directly. We're focusing this on the management of stormwater as it hits the ground and runs off.
Right.
Controlling where that goes and how how it flows, because that's what's causing the erosion, which causes the sediment discharge.
Right.
Those sediments come into the system, and as they move through the system, they pick up heavy metals and other contaminants that bind onto those particles. So the heavy metals and the other contaminants are being carried through the system. Whether those are coming from commercial or industrial areas doesn't really matter. The sediments are the carriers of the pollution elements that are affecting the health of the waterway. Your point's still valid. There is contaminated stormwater coming from commercial premises.
Yeah.
And the compliance, monitoring and enforcement of good separation of contaminated stormwater and treatment is a vital element in the picture of improving water quality.
Thank you, Mike. We've got the picture. You have run over a fair bit of time, and I've given you a bit of rope. So thank you very much for coming in. Good on you. Right, we now have Adriana coming to talk us about holes in concrete. Kind of. Welcome back.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Adriana. I have a Master of Science in Urban Resilience and Renewal, and it's that study that led me to get my certification as a permeable concrete contractor, because I wanted to apply my studies in a really practical way to help us build cities more resiliently. So I'm here to talk to you about how we can lower our flood risk with these urban developments through permeable pavements. 5 years ago, the Ministry of the Environment convened an urban water working group, and their second principle that they created out of 10 was to use engineering solutions where possible to mimic natural processes found in the environment, aka permeable pavers, permeable concrete. You can even get, there's like a hexagonal honeycomb plastic grid you can put down and then put gravel on it if you want like a really economical surface course for it. But essentially, we just want to replicate greenfield and let rainwater fall through the layers and infiltrate into the ground like nature intended, rather than paving and having to convey water and deal with it being polluted elsewhere. So the system I'm used to dealing with, for every 35 square meters of driveway we put down, 1 cubic meter of stormwater is retained in that system. So what we're doing now is, you put down a car park, say you get a 2-year storm and 5 centimeters of rain drops on it, and we have to put it somewhere because it's a hazard. So we want to put it into a stormwater pond that's as small as possible because there's no return on investment for big soil grass. And essentially what we're doing is we're taking that water and we're stacking it. So we have terrible silty soil in Christchurch. Sometimes it's 2 millimeters an hour, 4 millimeters an hour infiltration. And based on that infiltration rate, that stormwater pond will take you 10 days to draw it down, which is fine unless you get another storm, and then suddenly you're flooding. So what we want to do is infiltrate where the water lands, prevent pollution from happening. You know, there's bacteria that bioremediate motor oil in the base course. It's mimicking the forest. So that same storm, we would only have 5 centimeters of rain to deal with, and at 2 millimeters an hour infiltration rate, it'll take you a day to draw down that stormwater. You can use it to infiltrate roof water. So in this picture, it's pretty typical. You've got some decorative stone, so large media that comes out of downspouts doesn't plug up your base course. And then you've got a impermeable liner that protects the foundation of your building. And then you have an engineered wash drainage course for about 150 millimeters. And then another 150 mil of permeable concrete on top. And for an example, what could happen in Christchurch is, say you've got a green field and somebody buys it and they want to put 6 townhouses on it. Everybody has a car, so you have 1 car per household, and then you've got a driveway up the side. So in this scenario, you're turning a green field into an area that's 68% impermeable, and in a 100-year event, this particular built area is going to cause 85 cubic meters of stormwater to be discharged instead of infiltrated. So if you use a permeable pavement instead for the driveway, suddenly the building itself is only creating 55 cubic meters of stormwater, but the driveway then retains 19 cubic meters of stormwater. And if you use, geotechnical engineers can do an infiltration test to actually see how much you're getting for infiltration. So for this example, let's assume we have 4 millimeters an hour of infiltration rate underneath the system. Suddenly you are retaining and infiltrating 29 cubic meters of stormwater. So at the moment, we are urbanizing and paving the earth and creating stormwater that is creating more pollution and more problems. And it takes expensive pipe networks to deal with it. And these networks are susceptible to shearing and earthquakes, so the next earthquake we have is going to undo all the good work we've been doing. And as sea level rise continues to push the Avon and the Heathcote up, our current stormwater network of pipes is going to be less and less useful over time. So permeable pavements, in today's example, if we don't count infiltration rates, it can reduce your stormwater by 35%. If you actually count for infiltration, it's more like 50%. It deals with stormwater at the source. It removes pollutants. It provides water and air to urban trees and supports those. They're really important. And it reduces the urban heat island effect because it increases convective airflow, and it's really good stuff. So I know that the citywide surface water flooding update, staff have indicated that there is budget for doing a lot of stormwater modeling, and we're going to kind of see where areas of concern are and prioritize certain projects for those areas. But very humbly ask council to prioritize permeable pavements as a floodplain management project as soon as possible, because this is an answer and we've got it now and we just need to do it. Thank you.
Pauline?
Thank you. It's nice to see you again.
Hi.
Because I remember you came a few years ago now and made a presentation.
I did.
And I may have asked this then, I can't remember, but is there a huge cost difference in using permeable concrete to non-permeable? That's okay, because you said there could be an infrastructure saving, but just for concrete to concrete, what's...
At the moment, permeable concrete is about $10 to $20 more expensive than exposed aggregate per square meter.
Right.
Sorry, is that versus asphalt, did you say?
Exposed aggregate. And as far as regular concrete, it's more like $20 to $30, but we're talking small scale projects. If you had, like a large car park, I'm pretty sure that concrete suppliers could get that price of the actual concrete itself to come down.
Okay, so there's a cost difference, but yeah, that's good to know, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the council, where are we at? Tons of time. The council, I'm thinking, could look at if we're really going to put our money where our mouth is, and not that we can push people into doing things a la Takaha or the Metro Sports. They have got massive car parks. Big. Hey? they've got car parks.
Arakiori has hundreds.
That's what I mean. Oh, so, no, the Takaha as well has car parks. It's got hard standing around the outside of it. It's not going to all be grass. So we should look at maybe seeing what the cost difference is in some of these things, I feel, if we're going to be realistic and serious about what you're talking about.
And if it would be helpful, there's a software program that I use to quantify exactly how much void content is within these systems, depending on how deep you want to make your base course, infiltration rates. If you guys want to use that as a part of your planning to go, oh, well, we can retain 200 cubic meters of stormwater, or actually put a number against it, I would be more than happy to give you that software.
Because one of the things, the problem that I think is, take the likes of Metro Sports Building, Pakiori, everything that lands on that roof, or the car park, being it small or big, is going to end up straight in the river in about 20 minutes. So if we can slow any of it down, I think it's worthwhile. We'll never slow the roof down, but I'm just throwing that idea out there anyway. So I certainly understand what you're saying, so I'll be interested to learn more. Yanni,
So just another question for you, or Lynn, if we wanted to make any changes, and it won't be right now, but would that sit in with our procurement?
No, not really. It would be part of the specification and design at the beginning of the project. In relation to Parakiori, that is not our project.
Our thing.
So it's under separate
Yeah.
delivery. And I think following your presentation last time, there has been a communication to project managers and to staff to consider that this is an option. So I think there is a level of awareness, and it is about bringing forward proposals at the right time which show the benefits but also the comparative costs.
Okay, Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Lynn's right. We've already got resolutions to do stuff on this, and it would be good just to get a memo back on the progress. And there is a report coming back to one of our committees at some stage. But I just wanted to ask a question of the deputation. Because the thing I'm really interested in are there any cities or places around the world that you're aware of that have actually made this a requirement in terms of building code or in terms of like land use planning? Because it seems to me like the scale of the challenge in terms of surface water flooding is that having some regulation around requiring X amount of buildings or car parks, for example, to have it might be useful.
So the technology that we're using was developed in San Francisco, and the San Francisco City Council, when I was doing my training, I was out there and they were doing some public roads along, they had some really steep bluffs near the bridge, and they had a lot of erosion and runoff. So they essentially just dug up both sides of this road and made it all a permeable car parking area. But they have said that as a council, it's a really risk-averse environment, and you don't want to be making decisions that will have really long-term detrimental effects. But if they could be helpful, they would like to reach out and work with City Council in whatever, Christchurch City Council, whatever capacity they could.
Thank you, Yanni. We got one. We're over time, but one quick one from Tim, please.
Yeah, I just kind of, if there are examples in whether it's Wellington or Auckland or whatever, because one of the costs or hidden costs is managing the runoff, leaves and all this kind of stuff, and grates and things like that. So if there were some examples that you could find or that have already been done and supply them, that would be really good.
Yeah, well, so in Wellington, in Karori, a really hilly area, there was a development that was at the very end of the road, and the only way that they would give consent is to make sure that there was zero runoff from this development. So the entire road and all their footpaths and all of that ended up being permeable so that he could then build up there. Because otherwise it was going to be too risky as far as stormwater creation.
Very, very interesting. No, it is very. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Right, last one. So now we have Save Our Venues, and finally I'd like to hear from Feather Shaw on behalf of Save Our Venues, who will speak on regarding item 18. Welcome.
Kia ora, thank you. And I'm joined by Kendra Walls from 12 Bar, who might recognise from late last year. Ahi Māori e koutou no Tipoti o Haringari kei o tautaki tuku kainga nai nei raro I Te Mare o Kaitahu. Engari, Ngāti Manipoto Te Iwi. I grew up in Dunedin, but nowadays based in Christchurch. I whakapapa to Ngāti Manipoto, but I would just, as I just acknowledged I live my life up here and in the South Island under the mantle of Kaitahu. So I am the co-owner of live music venue Darkroom alongside my business partner Nick Vassar, and I'm here today with Kendra to just acknowledge the huge mahi of Mark and the team, and to thank you guys, our elected representatives, for listening to our concerns, the concerns of ourselves, our neighbouring venues like Space Academy as well, and other concerned hospitality and entertainment providers in our city regarding finding solutions for businesses and communities like ours to exist harmoniously amongst new residential developments. I wasn't present late last year when we came to present with Taylor and Co from Save Our Venues as I was home with COVID, but it's great to be here today on behalf of our group, largely just to say thank you, as we just have, and say that we're totaku the report's preferred option for one of that blended approach. Hearing that while it will take 2 or more years for changes at a policy level, which while not ideal is totally understandable, knowing that in the meantime, steps on the pathway towards workable solutions can also be made through those non-regulatory measures, and that those can be put in place in the more immediate future is really, really promising and sounds like a really positive way forward. Advisory services and guidance from relevant industry professionals around noise proofing, etc. would be most welcome as well. And of course, financial assistance towards covering some of those costs would be an essential lifeline to businesses like ours. Both of these are suggested already as some of the solutions in the report, and we would really love to see those come into fruition along with those other more longer term policy changes around clear noise limits, zoning and insulation standards. Our many musicians, live music fans and other supporters have frequently been asking us for updates on this matter since it was in the media quite a bit late last year, so we're really thrilled to have this before us now, a thorough working document to refer them to now we have this report. So we'd love those supporters to know that our advocacy group Save Our Venues is already meeting with folks from council and the planning team, and we will continue to meet with them and work with them to implement strategic solutions going forward. What we really ask of you is the council to please work on especially these non-regulatory fixes with a real sense of urgency. These townhouses and apartments are coming up around the central city really, really quickly, particularly the development right next to us. And this one and many more will be completed before those 2 years are up. So particularly for us along our Anderson Asser Street, we need advice and practical help now. It's essential to our survival as businesses and cultural and creative hubs as well, that we continue to work proactively together as we already have and find solutions before those townhouses next to us are completed. So the proposed measures by council are urgent and necessary protections to ensure it's viable for us to continue operating as music venues, and that same urgency should be extended beyond just us at St Asaph Street to the network of music venues citywide, where we're already seeing this conflict from noise restrict the capabilities of venues such as Ducks to provide space for live music. We hope that in developing these regulatory changes that the council recognises the inherent value that is provided by music venues, and that these principles be extended into forward-thinking policy that supports the development of music, culture and nighttime economies of Christchurch. Our venues should be a crucial part of developing that vibrant city which people want to live in, and this council initiative will be hugely important in establishing that healthy relationship between the residents and the culture that gives Christchurch its identity. We'd love some clarity going forward around the report, including which solution options are chosen to be actioned and what the timeline is on these being implemented. I know there won't be answers on these today, as this is, of course, the first major opportunity for council to consider next steps from here. So that's really it from us. I'm quite nervous. I'm probably talking really fast, but thanks heaps for allowing me to speak today. We are largely just wanting to be here to say thank you and acknowledge this report, and we're really looking forward to continue working with you. I'm confident many other entertainment and hospitality providers beyond Darkroom, Space Academy and 12 Bar will also be really excited and eager to work together finding a way forward. I absolutely love this city. It's my chosen home, and I'm excited to continue seeing it evolving into a more modern, livable and vibrant community, and I'm really honoured to have the opportunity to contribute to that process. So, ngā mihi, thank you.
Thank you very much, and never be scared. We don't all look as scary as Tim. So just relax. Have we got any questions for Heather? What's your name, Kelly?
Thank you very much. My son's band got a start with you guys at the Dark Room, which was really cool. Just in terms of the particular area you're in, do you see that as as an ongoing live music kind of venue?
Absolutely. We've already organically created like a live music hub. Darkroom's been there 11 years. Opened in October 2011. Space Academy's been there over 7 years, and 12 Bar opened in early 2020. So already we're pretty set up there. We're well established, and our community knows to come there. And visitors, now borders are open as well. A lot of folks coming from, who are visiting and saying, "Oh, I'm staying at a backpackers hostel," and the receptionist told me to come down here to find live music. And in one night they can come to an experimental noise night at ours, across the street to an O3 jazz sessions, then next door to something at 12 Bar as well. We're pretty set up where we are, and we would love to have the confidence and security and support to continue where we are.
I think it's also important to note that Darkroom opened there because of what was happening with the city. It was the first live music venue to open back up and provide a space. So it wasn't really like anyone picked that area. That was what was there and what could save the industry as it was after the earthquakes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done for your very first presentation. And don't be so scared next time. Thank you.
We don't want to come back.
Yeah, hopefully you don't see us again.
Good on you.
Thank you.
See ya.